The purpose of this video is to familiarize yourself with the idea of working in three-dimensional space. Now trust me on this, you're going to want to become familiar with working with most of these tools as it can save you a lot of time down the road. Clicking on the directional tool will allow you to position an object in three-dimensional space. All you need to do is click on the axis and move your object accordingly. For example, if I wanted to move it along the x-axis, I can do so by clicking on it and going left to right. I could just as well click on the z-axis and move this cube towards me or away from me. Now there's an important thing to note. We can always tell which direction we're moving in because the selected axis will turn yellow. Similarly, if I wanted to rotate this cube along the y-axis, we note that it turns yellow, and I move my mouse up and down along that axis and it rotates. I could also rotate it along the x and we can see the effect. Here I will scale this particular cube along the y-axis. The axis turns yellow, and I can scale my cube as I see fit. Now, if we wanted to scale this cube uniformly, we simply just pick the axis that we desire to scale along, hold down the left mouse button and the shift key simultaneously, and drag the mouse. And you can see the effect of doing this. Now, oftentimes when I'm making these kinds of changes to my model, I'll usually keep the properties window maximized so I can see how different values change based on my actions. So for example, as I move this particular object in three-dimensional space, we can see how the values within the properties window change. Likewise, I can change the scale or rotate this particular item, and we can see the change in values. Now, truth be known, it's usually a lot easier just to manually key in values. You'll get a much higher level of precision. We can see the effect of changing the x-axis. I'll just undo what I've done. So I'll click that once, and then twice. And I could also see the effect of keying in specific values for the x, y, and z with respect to rotation and scale as well if I wanted to. To pan the camera, simply click on the hand tool, or you can also type Q and use that as a shortcut to achieve the same result. I can also pivot my camera by holding down the right mouse button and moving the cursor. I'm just going to realign and reposition myself here. That looks about right. So let's take a moment to take a peek at another model I created. I'm going to zoom out using my middle mouse scroll wheel, and I'm going to select this living room object in my hierarchy view and hit F to find it. And this is a really good opportunity to talk about the difference between perspective view and orthogonal view. So perspective view is probably the one you're most familiar with, and that basically states that the closer you get to an object, the larger it appears, and the further away you get from an object, the smaller it will appear to you. Now, if I want to change to orthogonal view, I'll click this button. And in an orthogonal view, scale doesn't change as we get closer or further from a set of objects. So this is a much better perspective to model in, because you'll find you'll have a really difficult time, as I'm about to demonstrate, modeling in perspective view. And part of the problem stems from the fact that it's difficult to judge position in a perspective view. So as an example, I'm going to add, let's see here, let's add a sofa. I'm going to plunk it down in my living room because that would seem like to be a handy thing to have. Looks pretty good, right? And in a perspective view, right? Looks like it's pretty close to the rug and the coffee table. But let's change our camera angle and take a second peek. As you can see, we weren't really that close at all. And that comes back to the problem of perspective view not being a very good view to work in, because it's difficult to judge distance and size. So I can try my best here to bring this couch in closer to my table. I can rotate it, but you're going to find overall that it's a lot of work modeling in this way. And that looks okay right now, but what if you had to do this 10 or 20 times to create a scene? It would be very difficult. Here we're going to try and add a TV and a TV stand to this living room using perspective view, and you really begin to see how tedious this really is. I mean, no matter where I drag this or how close I think I am, I can never really have any degree of accuracy. So when I switch to orthogonal view though, look how much easier this is. All the objects maintain their scale. It's much easier to get an idea of where this TV stand is in relation to the other objects in the model. And I'm just going to tweak this a little bit. And now I'm going to add a TV and I'm going to parent it to the TV stand. And I'm going to pull it up. And look at how much easier this is to do in orthogonal mode. I can rotate this a little bit. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to take a look from a couple of different camera angles. So keep in mind that you'll want to become familiar with both modeling in perspective view and orthogonal, but for finer details and modeling sub-assemblies, you may want to do it in orthogonal view.